Camp Willow Creek's Forgotten Cabin Camp. Willow Creek had always been known as a peaceful retreat for families and friends, tucked deep in the heart of a dense forest. Surrounded by towering pines, with a serene lake at its center, it was a perfect getaway from the chaos of everyday life. People came to fish, hike, and sit around campfires. But like any remote place, it had its dark secrets that had been forgotten, buried under years of smiles and laughter. Most visitors never heard about the mysterious cabin in the woods, and those who did were warned to stay far away from it. The Arrival. It was early summer when a group of 5 friends decided to spend a weekend at Camp Willow Creek. Emma, Jason, Lily, Ben, and Sarah had been friends since high school, and this trip was their annual reunion, a chance to reconnect after months apart. They had chosen the camp for its tranquility, eager to escape the noise of the city. As they drove up the gravel path leading to the campgrounds, the beauty of the place instantly captivated them. The air smelled of pine and fresh earth, and the only sounds were the distant calls of birds and the rustling of leaves in the wind. "This place is amazing," Emma said, rolling down the window to take in the view. Jason, who was driving, smiled. "Told you it would be worth it? We'll have the whole weekend to just relax and disconnect." Lily, sitting in the back, glanced out the window. "As long as we don't run into any bears." "Or psychos," Ben joked, elbowing Sarah. "Isn't that how every horror movie starts? Group of friends, middle of nowhere." "Very funny," Sarah replied, rolling her eyes. "Let's just enjoy ourselves, okay?" They soon arrived at their reserved cabin, a cozy, rustic building with a view of the lake. The cabin was well maintained, with a small porch, a fire pit, and plenty of space inside. They unpacked quickly, eager to explore the area before nightfall. After settling in, the group decided to take a hike along one of the many trails that wound through the forest. The sun was still high in the sky, casting long beams of light through the trees. The forest was beautiful and full of life, with the occasional squirrel darting across their path and the sound of the wind rustling the leaves. But as they ventured deeper into the woods, the atmosphere began to shift. The light dimmed as the trees grew thicker, and the air grew cooler. It wasn't long before they noticed something unusual, a narrow, overgrown path veering off from the main trail. "Hey, look at this," Jason said, pointing to the barely visible trail. "I wonder where this leads." Ben, always the adventurous one, grinned. "Only one way to find out." Lily frowned. "Are you sure that's a good idea? We don't even know if that's an actual trail." Jason shrugged. "We've got plenty of daylight left. Let's check it out for a bit, and if it gets too creepy, we'll turn back." Against their better judgment, the group agreed. They veered off the main trail, pushing through the overgrowth as they followed the narrow path deeper into the woods. The cabin in the woods. After about 20 minutes of walking, they came upon something unexpected. A cabin. It was old and weathered, its wooden walls covered in moss, and its roof sagging under the weight of years of neglect. The windows were dark, cracked, and the door hung slightly ajar. "That's definitely not on the map," Emma said, her voice low. Sarah looked around uneasily. "Why would there be a cabin out here? It doesn't look like anyone's used it in decades." Jason stepped closer, intrigued. "Maybe it was part of the camp a long time ago and just got abandoned." Lily crossed her arms, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't like this, let's go back." But Ben, always looking for a thrill, couldn't resist. "Come on, it's probably just an old ranger cabin or something. Let's take a look inside." Without waiting for a response, Ben walked up to the door and pushed it open. The hinges creaked loudly and a gust of stale, musty air hit him in the face. The others hesitated for a moment before following him inside. The interior of the cabin was dark, the only light filtering through the broken windows. Dust hung in the air and the floor creaked with every step. The furniture inside was old and decayed. A rotting table, a few broken chairs, and a bed frame with a moldy mattress. On one wall there was an old, rusted, wood-burning stove, and on the other, an empty bookshelf covered in cobwebs. "This place is a dump," Ben said, laughing as he kicked at a broken chair leg. "I don't like this," Emma muttered, her eyes darting around the room. "It feels wrong." As the group explored the cabin, they noticed strange markings on the walls, symbols carved into the wood, faded with age. They were unfamiliar, almost tribal in appearance, and covered nearly every surface. "Okay, this is getting creepy," Lily said, her voice shaking. What are those? I have no idea, Jason said, running his fingers over the carvings. But they don't look random. Sarah, who had been silent up until now, suddenly gasped. Guys, look at this. She was standing in front of the bed frame, staring at the mattress. The others gathered around her, their eyes widening in horror. There on the mattress were deep red stains, blood stains, long dried but unmistakable. This isn't funny anymore, Emma said, backing away. We need to leave. But just as they turned to head for the door, the temperature in the room plummeted. A cold, unnatural chill filled the air, and the light from the windows seemed to dim even further. What the hell? Ben whispered, rubbing his arms. Why is it so cold all of a sudden? Before anyone could answer, they heard it, a faint sound coming from somewhere in the cabin. It was soft at first, almost like a whisper, but it quickly grew louder. It was the sound of breathing, heavy, labored breathing, as if someone, or something, was in the room with them. Jason's heart pounded in his chest as he spun around, his eyes scanning the dark corners of the cabin. Who's there? He called out, his voice trembling. The breathing grew louder, closer, until it felt like it was right next to them. Then from the shadows in the corner of the room, something moved. A figure, tall, thin, and twisted, emerged from the darkness. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over its bones, its eyes hollow and black. It moved slowly, its limbs contorted at unnatural angles, dragging itself toward them. The group froze, paralyzed by fear as the figure crept closer. Its mouth hung open, and from its throat came a low, guttural moan. "Run!" Jason shouted, snapping out of his terror. The group bolted for the door, tripping over each other in their desperation to escape. They burst out of the cabin and into the forest, the cold air still clinging to their skin. They didn't stop running until they reached the main trail, their lungs burning from exertion. Once they were safely back on the trail, they stopped to catch their breath. No one spoke for several minutes, their minds struggling to process what they had just seen. "What the hell was that?" Lily finally gasped, her face pale. "I don't know," Jason replied, his voice shaky. "But we're not going back there, ever." Ben, who had been the most eager to explore the cabin, was now visibly shaken. That wasn't normal. That thing, it wasn't human. "No kidding," Sarah muttered, her hands trembling. "We need to get out of here, now!" Without another word, the group made their way back to the cabin they had rented. The once peaceful woods now felt oppressive, as if the trees themselves were watching them. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig sent their hearts racing. The night terror. That night, back at their rental cabin, no one could sleep. The group huddled together in the living room, too afraid to go to bed. The memory of the twisted figure haunted their thoughts, and the unnatural chill still clung to their skin. At some point during the night, Sarah finally dozed off. But her sleep was anything but restful. In her dream, she was back in the old cabin, standing in front of the blood-stained mattress. The air was cold, and she could hear the same labored breathing from earlier, growing louder and louder. She turned around, and there it was, the figure, its hollow eyes staring directly at her. It reached out with one twisted, skeletal hand, its fingers brushing against her arm. The touch was ice cold, and Sarah could feel her body going numb, paralyzed by its presence. Then it spoke. Its voice was a low, rasping whisper that seemed to echo in her mind. "Leave, or you'll never leave at all." Sarah jolted awake, gasping for breath. She was drenched in sweat, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was still dark, but something felt wrong. She glanced around the room, and that's when she saw it. The figure. Whispers in the pines. The crisp autumn air carried a hint of impending change as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dense pine forest surrounding Camp Willowbrook. Nestled deep within these woods, the camp had been a beloved summer destination for generations, offering serene lakes, cozy cabins, and endless adventures. However, as the leaves turned golden and the nights grew longer, whispers of the camp's dark past began to resurface. Arrival at Camp Willowbrook. A group of 5 friends, Emma, Jake, Lily, Ryan, and Sophia, had decided to spend a weekend at Camp Willowbrook, seeking respite from their hectic lives in the city. They had heard stories of the camp's enchanting beauty and the thrill of its legendary ghost tales. But like most, they dismissed them as mere folklore meant to add excitement to the summer nights. "Can you believe we're finally here?" Emma exclaimed as they unloaded their gear from Jake's old van. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she took in the towering pines and the tranquil lake shimmering under the twilight sky. "I've been looking forward to this all year," Jake replied, securing the last of their backpacks. No work, no stress, just us and nature. Lily, always the adventurous spirit, led the way toward their assigned cabin, a rustic wooden structure nestled near the lake's edge. Ryan and Sophia followed closely, chatting animatedly about the plans for the weekend. First night, campfire tales. As dusk gave way to night, the group gathered around a roaring campfire, the flames dancing and casting flickering shadows on their faces. The aroma of toasted marshmallows filled the air, and the sounds of the forest created a symphony of nocturnal life. "All right, who's brave enough to share a ghost story?" Jake challenged, a mischievous grin playing on his lips. Sophia, always eager to set the mood, began. "They say that years ago, a young camper named Margaret disappeared in these woods. Some say she was lost during a hike, while others believe something more sinister took her." Emma shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. "Do you think her spirit still haunts the camp?" Lily leaned in, eyes wide. "I've heard that on certain nights, you can hear her crying near the lake, searching for her way back." Ryan, skeptical but intrigued, nodded thoughtfully. "I've heard the whispers too. They say if you listen closely, the trees speak your name." As the night deepened, the friends laughed off the stories, but an uneasy feeling settled over them. The forest seemed to hold its breath, and the fire's warmth couldn't entirely dispel the chill in the air. The cabin. Their cabin was cozy but old, with creaking floorboards and wooden beams that groaned under the weight of the night. They settled in, unpacking their belongings and preparing for a night of games and laughter. "Let's split up and explore a bit," suggested Lily, her adventurous nature undeterred by the evening's eerie tales. "There's so much to see around here." Reluctantly, the group agreed, deciding to reconvene after dark. Emma stayed behind to read a book, while Jake and Ryan ventured towards the old boathouse by the lake. Lily and Sophia headed into the deeper woods, eager to uncover hidden trails and secret spots. Unsettling discoveries. As midnight approached, Emma glanced up from her book, feeling a strange presence in the cabin. The wind outside seemed to whisper her name, and shadows danced unnaturally against the walls. Meanwhile, Jake and Ryan reached the boathouse, its windows dark and foreboding. Inside, the air was thick with mustiness, and cobwebs clung to forgotten corners. As they explored, Jake stumbled upon an old, rusted lantern hanging from a hook. "Check this out," he called to Ryan, who was inspecting a stack of decaying wooden crates. As Jake picked up the lantern, a sudden chill swept through the room. The faint sound of footsteps echoed outside, growing louder and closer. They exchanged uneasy glances, the silence of the night amplifying every noise. Back in the woods, Lily and Sophia ventured deeper, the moonlight filtering through the dense canopy. Suddenly, Lily froze, her eyes fixed on a shadowy figure standing a short distance away. "Sophia, do you see that?" Sophia squinted, trying to make out the figure's features. "It's probably just someone else camping, right?" But as they watched, the figure began to move towards them, its steps slow and deliberate. The friends turned to run, but the path back seemed to twist and elongate, leading them deeper into the darkness. The haunting intensifies. Emma, alone in the cabin, felt the temperature drop. Her breath visible in the air, she heard soft sobbing coming from outside her window. Gathering her courage, she approached the glass, only to see a translucent figure of a young girl standing by the lake, her eyes hollow and sorrowful. "Margaret?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. The figure tilted her head as if listening, then slowly dissipated into the night air. Meanwhile, Jake and Ryan, unnerved by the footsteps, decided to leave the boathouse. As they stepped outside, the once calm lake was now eerily still, the water reflecting the silver moonlight. Suddenly, the lantern Jake had found flickered to life, casting ghostly shadows across the water's surface. "Let's get out of here," Ryan urged, but Jake was transfixed by the lantern's glow. Before Ryan could react, a spectral figure emerged from the lake, its form wavering like mist. The apparition reached out towards them, its face twisted in eternal anguish. Panicked, Jake dropped the lantern and they both sprinted back to the cabin, hearts pounding. Desperate reunion. Lily and Sophia, lost and terrified, stumbled upon a clearing where the whispers of the forest seemed to converge. The trees swayed unnaturally, their branches clawing at the night sky. Suddenly, the ground beneath them opened, revealing a dark abyss. They screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the oppressive darkness. Back at the cabin, Emma tried to calm herself, but the door slammed shut on its own, trapping her inside. The sobbing grew louder, turning into wails that echoed through the room. Desperate, she called out for her friends, her voice barely audible over the haunting cries. Jake and Ryan burst into the cabin, breathless and wide-eyed. "We need to leave now!" Jake exclaimed. "Something's wrong with this place." Before they could react, the cabin was plunged into darkness as the power went out. The only light came from the flickering fireplace, casting ominous shadows on the walls. The air grew thick with tension, and the friends huddled together, fear etched on their faces. The spirit's plea. A ghostly apparition of Margaret appeared before them, her eyes pleading for help. "Please find me," she whispered, her voice echoing through the room. Emma stepped forward, her fear giving way to compassion. "What happened to you, Margaret? How can we help you?" Margaret's spirit began to recount her tragic story. "I was lost in the woods, searching for my brother. A storm came and I couldn't find my way back. I've been trapped here ever since, unable to move on." Jake looked around, searching for clues. "Is there something we can do to help you?" Margaret pointed towards the lake. "Find my brother. He never made it back." The search for answers determined to help, the friends decided to investigate further. They remembered the boathouse and the old maps they had found earlier. Emma retrieved her book, revealing a hidden compartment containing an old journal. It detailed Margaret's last days at Camp Willowbrook, and mentioned a hidden trail leading to a forgotten part of the forest where her brother had vanished. With renewed purpose, the group ventured out into the night, guided by the faint light of the lantern still clutched by Jake. The forest seemed alive, the trees whispering secrets as they navigated the treacherous terrain. The forgotten trail. Following the journal's instructions, they found a concealed path marked by ancient stone markers overgrown with moss. The trail led them deeper into the heart of the forest, where the air grew colder and the whispers louder. As they pressed on, the path narrowed, and the oppressive feeling intensified. Suddenly, they reached a clearing where the remnants of an old campsite lay abandoned, rusted tools, decayed tents, and the skeletal remains of a fire pit. In the center stood a weathered gravestone, barely visible beneath the foliage. It bore the name Thomas, confirming the journal's account that Margaret's brother had perished here. Confronting the past, as they approached the gravestone, the temperature plummeted. A thick fog rolled in, obscuring their vision. From the mist emerged the spirits of Margaret and Thomas, their forms flickering like candle flames. "Thank you for finding me," Margaret whispered, tears streaming down her translucent face. "Now help him find peace." Thomas's spirit nodded, his expression one of eternal sorrow. "We've been trapped here, bound by our untimely deaths. Release us and we can finally move on." Jake looked around, searching for a way to help. "What can we do to free you?" Margaret gestured towards the lake. "There is a relic that binds us to this place. Retrieve it from the depths, and our souls will be free." The Descent. The group made their way back to the lake, the moonlight reflecting off the water's surface like shards of glass. Emma recalled the journal mentioning an old amulet lost in the lake during the storm. Determined, Jake decided to dive in, armed with only a flashlight. The water was frigid, each stroke a battle against the cold. As he reached the bottom, his flashlight illuminated an old wooden chest half buried in the sediment. With trembling hands, he opened the chest to reveal the amulet, a tarnished silver pendant engraved with intricate symbols. As he lifted it from the water, the oppressive energy around them began to lift, the whispers turning into grateful sighs, breaking the curse. Returning to the clearing, Jake held out the amulet. Margaret and Thomas approached, their forms becoming clearer, their faces serene. "Place the amulet on the gravestone," Emma instructed, her voice steady despite the fear still lingering in her heart. Jake carefully placed the pendant on the stone. A brilliant light enveloped the clearing, and the spirits of Margaret and Thomas began to glow brighter. With a final peaceful smile, they dissolved into the light, their souls finally at rest. Aftermath. A peaceful dawn as dawn broke. The forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The oppressive darkness had lifted, replaced by the gentle warmth of the morning sun. The friends sat in silence, processing the night's terrifying yet ultimately rewarding events.
"We did it,"
Lily whispered, her voice filled with awe. Ryan nodded, a sense of accomplishment washing over him. "Margaret and Thomas are finally free." Emma looked around, feeling a profound sense of closure. Camp Willowbrook has a new story to tell. A story of friendship, courage, and letting go. Jake smiled, relief evident on his face. "Let's get out of here before anything else happens." As they packed up their belongings and prepared to leave, the campgrounds felt different, calmer, as if the forest itself was no longer haunted by restless spirits. They took one last look at the serene lake, now reflecting the clear blue sky, and knew that their bond had been forged in the face of true horror. Epilogue: The Legacy of Willowbrook. Months later, back in the city, the friends often reminisced about their unforgettable weekend at Camp Willowbrook. They shared their story with others, ensuring that Margaret and Thomas's tale would never be forgotten. The camp continued to welcome new visitors, but now with a deeper understanding of its history and the spirits that once roamed its grounds. Occasionally, on quiet nights, the wind would carry a faint whisper through the pines, a reminder of the night when darkness was overcome by friendship and bravery. And while Camp Willowbrook remained a place of beauty and adventure, the legacy of those who had found peace lingered, forever woven into the fabric of the forest.